MAGA Speaker Mike Johnson is panicking today over more and more Republicans turning on him in Congress. Johnson is supposed to be the leader of his party, but as this shutdown drags on, even MAGA Republicans are getting fed up with his lies, and as members of the House start boiling over in a revolt against him, Mike Johnson is now hinting at dropping a bomb in Congress that could distract them from both the shutdown and the Epstein files. Mike Johnson is so cowardly that he's willing to create a disaster in the House rather than just face his angry representatives. Now we'll get to all of this and more, so stick around and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. Now, it's no secret that I do not like Mike Johnson. Neither does anyone on the left, of course. But even some Republicans are now turning on the Speaker of the House. Two new sets of polling from last week indicate that Mike Johnson could be so unpopular that he's actually killing the Republican Party. Firstly, it was reported that over the course of the past year, Democrats have finally regained the lead in party ID among Americans.
New polling just out was really eye-popping to me.
It was shocking to me, John, and it comes down to party identification. Do you identify as a Democrat or as a Republican? And traditionally speaking, this is a metric that has been quite telling of elections, and we'll get into that a little bit. Party ID margin, Dem versus Republicans. Specifically, I'm talking about Gallup. Back in Q1 of 2025, it was a tie. Look at how much Democrats have gained on this metric, according to Gallup. Their latest metric, Democrats are ahead by 7 points. That is a 7-point movement to the left. I looked at some other pollsters as well to see if there was similar movement. Among Quinnipiac, it was +1 Republican. And you can see, again, movement to the left, Democrats +3.
Now, obviously, there are a lot of reasons why Republicans are dropping in popularity these days, but experts are pointing out that it could be in part due to the disastrous Congress Mike Johnson is leading. As it turns out, Mike Johnson has led two of the least productive Congresses in the entire history of this country.
You know, I'm going to quote the great scholar Billy Preston. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. What are we talking about here? Well, nothing's getting done in Congress. But the truth is, if you look back at Congresses at this point in a presidency, we were already dealing with a historically unpopular Congress anyway. At this point in presidency, we have only got, get this, just 36 laws actually signed, 36 bills signed into law. That is the fewest at this point in any presidency dating back since 1953, way less than the median of 87. And so the bottom line is, nothing's getting done in Congress right now, but nothing was getting done in Congress right now. You go back basically since 1973, the fewest, 274. That was the last Congress. And get this, I went back even further. I jumped in that DeLorean time machine. You could go back all the way to the Civil War and you wouldn't find a Congress that was less productive than the last one. The median, 478. You don't have to be a mathematical scholar to know that 274 is way less than 478.
Under Mike Johnson's leadership, Congress has done almost nothing for 2 years. And now, despite his constant complaining to the press, the American public puts the blame for this shutdown squarely on Mike Johnson and the Republicans.
Here's the nugget to take away. Take Donald Trump out of the equation. Who is to blame for the shutdown? Here it is. 50% Republicans leading that 43% Democrats. This is the rare poll where you don't want to lead. And in this particular case, the GOP in Congress is leading the blame game. And more than that, I will note the one big thing that they passed, John, was, of course, the big, beautiful bill. And that remains underwater at this point by more than 10 points. I was just looking at the average of polls. So the bottom line is they're winning the blame game, but they're losing on the bill that, of course, they're essentially betting their stakes on in this Congress.
No matter how bad this government shutdown gets and how many times Mike Johnson blames it on the Democrats, we all know whose fault it really is. We are on the brink of millions of Americans losing food stamps as the next shutdown disaster. And as you can bet, the fallout for this will be a political disaster for Johnson. And it looks like some Republicans are almost ready for a full-on revolt against Mike Johnson. In a report from Axios today, someone leaked that there was a private call between Republicans who were discussing how they opposed Mike Johnson keeping Congress closed. They even flirt with the idea of actually negotiating with Democrats. This article mentions names like Dan Crenshaw, Kevin Kiley, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, all of whom think Johnson is making the shutdown worse by trying to force Republicans to stay out of D.C. Apparently, these reps and others are privately saying that Johnson is a useless leader who is only making the shutdown worse. And they aren't just complaining to each other, we've actually seen Marjorie Taylor Greene call out Johnson in public this month.
This should not be happening. And I don't think, look, as a member of Congress, we already have a low enough job approval rating. This shutdown is just going to drive everybody's approval rating that much lower.
But so you're putting the blame on the leadership of your party.
Absolutely. We control the House. We control the Senate. We have the White House. I've been vocal saying, you can use the nuclear option in the Senate. This doesn't have to be a shutdown.
If other fed up Republicans start calling out Johnson, he might lose the support that he needs to keep the House shut down. And even worse, because of the slim margins in the House, if enough Republicans get fed up with him, Mike Johnson could be kicked out of the speakership just like Kevin McCarthy, the guy who he replaced, was. Now, if I was seeing reports that big names in my party were secretly turning on me, I would try to reassure everyone that I had a plan, or at least knew what I was doing. But instead, Mike Johnson has been hosting daily press conferences where he intentionally tries to make the shutdown worse by spreading lies about everything imaginable. For example, yesterday he claimed that he had a ready-to-go healthcare plan that will fix all of America's problems, but they just can't pass it until the shutdown ends. Obvious lies like these are why Republicans like Dan Crenshaw and Marjorie Taylor Greene are losing support for MAGA Mike.
Is there any work being done on a Republican solution to the healthcare cliff? I mean, there's been talk in the past about HSAs, about a short-term plan. Is there any work being done? Is it being done in a year? Surely there must be some preliminary.
Yeah, I've been carrying this visual aid around waiting for this question for a while, okay? So when I say that the Republicans have been working on a fix for health care, we've been doing this for years. And many of you who've been on this beat for a while know this is two publications. When I was chair of the Republican Study Committee, the largest caucus of Republicans in Congress, we published volumes of ideas on health care. This was our volume 1, a framework for personalized affordable care. We had an entire body of the smartest minds in Congress, the smartest Republican minds who worked around the clock. The Doctors Caucus, they talked to stakeholders from around the country and in all the areas related to healthcare, and they came up with a formula on how to reduce the cost of healthcare dramatically, how to make Obamacare affordable and workable in some way for the American people, to increase the access to care and the quality of care. And these ideas have been on paper for a long time. There's volumes of this stuff, volumes of it. What we're doing right now, what we have been doing, what we were already doing, because we knew we were coming up to the end of the year, and we know that healthcare is a major burden for the American people. We've been working on it since day one of this Congress. We worked on it in the years prior. And we've already demonstrated, this is not talking points for us. When we say the Republican Party is the only party that has any chance at fixing healthcare for the American people, we've demonstrated it. We put it into the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut. As you know, we strengthened the Medicaid program. We started there.
Now, aside from just making things up, Johnson is also using these press conferences to relentlessly attack Democrats, even though his party sounds like they want him to negotiate. In today's press conference, Mike Johnson brought out Republican Representative Emmer from Minnesota, who seriously says that the Democrat Party is filled with terrorists. Remember last month when Republicans said that we need to tone down the rhetoric?
You're playing politics with people's lives. And as Leader Scalise and the Speaker have reminded us, for what? So that you can appease the radical pro-terrorist wing of your party. So that you can fundraise off of picking a fight with President Trump. It's not worth it. In fact, it's despicable and downright wrong.
After accusing Democrats of dangerous rhetoric, Republicans have once again shown that every accusation is just a confession. The Democratic Party has asked for healthcare support, and Republicans respond by saying that the left support terrorists and hate the American people. And that wasn't even the most shocking part of Johnson's press conference today. What really has people talking is this new ticking time bomb that Mike Johnson is threatening against his own party. If you remember from earlier this year, Republicans were complaining about Joe Biden using an auto pen. It's a little machine that can sign your name perfectly the way that you would normally sign it. Well, even though Donald Trump has actually admitted to using one before, Republicans claim that Joe Biden was using one on lots and lots of legislation because he was too old to actually understand the bills and do his job. Now, I just want to say that there's no evidence that the Biden administration was having laws signed off without Biden's knowledge, or that he was too incapacitated to do his job. But despite having no real proof, Mike Johnson announced today that he wants to work with the Trump administration to undo everything that they claim may have been signed with an auto pen during Biden's term. And the implications of this would be huge.
And you'll be reporting on this all day, but the Oversight Chairman James Comer released a blockbuster report now on the Biden auto pen presidency. And this report includes 47 hours worth of transcripts and testimony revealing that every executive action signed by the auto pen without written authorization from President Biden should be voided. This is an unprecedented situation in American politics and government. The actions of President Biden simply were not all his own actions, and there are major implications to that, including all the pardons that he signed.
I mean, just let that sink in. Everything that the Republicans think was signed by an auto pen could be reversed, but how do they even know that it was signed by an auto pen? Couldn't they just say that any bill that they don't personally like from Biden's term was an auto pen and then just declare it illegal? But more importantly, think about what would happen if they did this. Executive orders and pardons are relatively easy to reverse, but imagine if the infrastructure bill was just suddenly declared illegal, billions of dollars of funding and thousands of projects across the country put on hold until Congress writes new laws. But here's the thing, Congress can barely pass any bills as is right now. Imagine if Mike Johnson forces Congress to spend their time rewriting all of the legislation from the past 4 years. This isn't about Joe Biden breaking the rules, this is Mike Johnson threatening to create so much chaos in Congress that even the Democrats are too busy to reopen the government or fight to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. Mike Johnson is seeing congressmen get fed up with him, the public blame the shutdown on him, and remembers that the last Republican speaker was kicked out of his job. And instead of trying to not be the literal worst person in Congress, Mike Johnson is instead threatening to just burn the House completely down. Every day this shutdown goes on, the Republican Congress gets more and more dysfunctional, and if Mike Johnson gets his way, everything could get so much worse from here. I'm sure we'll get even more crazy proposals from Johnson as the week goes on, but until then, leave your thoughts down in the comments below, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more.